to Andy Shaw, who's on our committee and also chair of the BCS South Yorkshire branch, about mental health and testing.
Yeah, so it's great to be here today and seeing all of you face to face rather than just remotely as well. Everyone's talks today have been really good so far, so I hope mine is as good as all of yours as well. So I am Andy Shaw. I am part of the Tickets Committee. I also write for Tester magazine. I do apologise, I've not been on for a while. This year's been a crazy year. I was the chair of the South Yorkshire BCS branch, although I've handed over the reins to a couple of other people as well within the South Yorkshire community as well. But we do some really good events all year, which you're all invited to as well, either face-to-face or online as well. I'm also an advocate for mental health as well, and I'm going to be explaining more about mental health awareness and some of the projects which I'm planning on doing as well. I'm going to be focusing this talk about mental health in testing as well, as testing is fun, and as like a lot of you as well, I do really enjoy testing, but sometimes it can be really stressful and it can be pressurising as well. I will give a trigger warning though as well. Part of the presentation there is a reference about suicide, which I'll mention later on during the talk as well. But no, thanks for coming. And firstly, I'm going to discuss about how mental health can be a concern as well, especially if you're a tester as well. So when you have to test a piece of software, be it web-based, mobile-based, or software-based, especially if you're still using a waterfall project and sometimes in the agile project, you can sometimes get the sudden sort of notice, oh, you need to test something in a week, or you need to test something in 4 days, and you've got to come up with a plan to test it all, perform some regression testing, make sure that it's fit for purpose and released by a certain date as well. Otherwise, the customers might not be happy, or you might miss an important deadline as well. So deadlines and time pressures as well could be very stressful as well, especially if there's a few testers within an organisation who've got more developers who have more time to develop their work as well, and more emphasis of focusing on developers who get all the tools, really good tools as well, whereas testers, you'll get a limited amount of tools, and trying to argue for certain tools to help you do your role can be challenging as well. So there can be the pressure of that. A lot of the time as well, there can be the really unrealistic high expectations as well, where in a Scrum sprint you want to sort of test specific functionality for a user story, test some bugs, but also look at how to automate certain functionality as well within different time periods, and you've only got a sprint of 2 weeks to do it all, and you also need to attend some meetings to discuss how you're going to do that as well. And when the automation testing tools do not work as what you'd like to do, and you're spending more time testing that as well, that could also be a pressure as well. Developers as well. I've been fortunate to work with some really good developers during my time as a tester so far, but even so, understandably, they're busy focusing on code, focusing on trying to code everything so that they can get the project out as well, and sometimes finding the time to discuss with a developer about what their understanding of the system, any sort of areas which you're not sure as well, can be very tricky as well. So that puts a lot of time on them and you as well. Sometimes as well, there can be sort of bullying in organisations, which can also cause stress. So I've seen testers as well who've been bullied by previous managers. I'm an example of that as well, where I've been told I've not been good enough. It's caused me stress. It's caused me a lot of anxiety. It's made me question what I do. Also, if you've been in organisations, you'll have sometimes a really high developer ratio, so about 4 or 5 developers to 1 or 2 testers within an organisation. And sometimes if you have sort of like 7 or 8 people within an organisation developing stuff, and you're the only tester as well, and they complete all their workload as well, and you've got so much stuff that you have to tackle, plus even more work as well, because you're one of the only testers working on a single project as well, that can be really stressful. Also, if there's job losses or redundancies which are planned because companies are struggling to pay the bills, or they need to sort of restructure or downsize, one of the testers is one of the testing roles is it can sometimes be the first to go as well, because a lot of companies seem to think developers are more important. We need a developer to do this, we need an Android developer, we need an iOS developer, we need a UX designer, we need a web developer or a full stack developer. All justifiable roles as well, but we also need testers as well who can test the systems, look at it from a different perspective. Because developers and testers, we're not enemies. It's not a scene on Street Fighter where you've got a developer there with all superpowers, and you've got a sort of a tester there who isn't as seen as, you know, as consistent as the developers, but still the testers are still important. A lot of the time as well, if anybody has also experienced this as well, I fully empathise with you as well. When something's been released to production and you get a problem back, sometimes it's usually the testers who are blamed. The thing the blame gets pointed: why didn't you test this? Why didn't you test this? Come on, why didn't you test this? Why has this failed? And really, when you've had limited time to test it all and limited resources and limited tools as well, I'm not saying that as a tester I'm fully excused from everything, but at the same time as well, we're only human. We can't sort of test 24/7, although it'd be great to do so. We also need to test it properly and thoroughly as well before it's released, and that's not always possible. So a lot of the time we're blamed as well for stuff going wrong. So I'm going to talk about some of my experiences with mental health and testing as well. So some of the time where I've worked, I have experienced anxiety as well, where I've been asked to test specific parts of the software and trying to understand how different parts of the system works as well. And when there's limited time to test it has actually caused some anxiety and some worry as well, because I'm thinking, should I know everything? There's stuff which I don't feel confident in sort of giving off sort of a thumbs up and a vote of confidence to say whether a piece of software should be released or not. So that's something I'm a bit concerned about. The same with time pressures as well. So I've worked in organisations where there's a pressure to test everything. So one place I worked 4 days to just to go through the whole regression suite. Very short notice. We did it, but it was just tiring and exhausting as well. Whereas I would have preferred a bit more time to sort of test everything, look at any sort of potential bugs which were there and get them fixed as well, plus do some exploratory testing to see if there was any other areas of testing which I hadn't sort of focused on, but other areas which I could look at as well, just to make sure there's no bugs and get a better understanding of the software which I'm testing as well. So that was tiring. Also as well, I've gone through position of being made redundant before years ago as well, which caused me anxiety. I had trouble sleeping. I was even ill a few days as well, just because my job, although I thought it was safe, I was actually made redundant 9 years ago, and it just caused me a lot of stress. I bottled it up for a long while, and I tried to be strong, and there's only a certain amount of time when you can be strong for as well, and you've got to, and it was just sort of like opening up to somebody which actually helped me feel better about that. Also as well, when I've joined different organisations, sometimes the onboarding process of learning new software can be a lot to take in as well, and I'll learn stuff sort of slowly, and I'll learn stuff sort of slowly. I can't pick it up very quickly, and sometimes there's a pressure to learn everything pretty much for the first time, or you're expected to have a really good understanding of the business by week one, and then thrown into the ring or the arena in week 2 or 3 as well. So that sort of caused me some sort of anxiety. A lot of the time, I felt like a fraud. I mean, a lot of the people in this room, you're really good at what you do. I mean, compared to a lot of a lot of you. So compared to people like you, Adam, and you, Deborah, and Jonathan Wright, and Nicola Martin, for example, I feel like a complete fraud. I feel like I shouldn't know more than what I do know, and I feel like feel like a bit of a fraud. I've even felt like that with running the South Yorkshire BCS branch. I thought, I'm not doing a great job of the branch, really, am I? That was how I felt, but I felt that through time as well, I've got to realise that everybody's in the same boat, everybody's still learning, and there's stuff which I probably know, which I could share with everybody else, which no one else is understanding knows about. So, and another thing was lockdown. That was tough. The first 9 months from March 2020 to January 2021, I thought, great, a new opportunity. I can finish work earlier. I can also spend a lot of time cooking something as well for tea. We've got more daylight as well, so I could go for a long walk after work, which is good, and clear the head. I could do Zoom sessions online, and attend sessions online, networking sessions online. But in January 2021, I worked extra hours to get some work from projects that need to be completed down. I was working weekends. I was working till about a long time, sort of like early evening sometimes. My morale just suddenly went like that, quite low, and that was also because I hadn't seen people face to face. I'd just been spent most of the time within sort of like a few walls around the house, and although where we live is nice and everything, it doesn't substitute actually sort of seeing people face to face rather than just being online. So as testers, managing mental health is very, very important, particularly now as well. So with mental health, what I've started doing is looking at timescales and workloads as well. So it'd be great to get everything completed, but you need to also be realistic as well. So are there some things which can be moved from one sprint to another one if you're working in agile? Are there specific projects which need to be completed urgently, or can there be some projects which can be completed later on as well? Because at the end of the day, they say there's 24 hours in a day, but you need some time for sleeping, you need some time to switch off, you need some time to recharge your batteries, you need some time just to get out of the office or get out of home, switch off and do something different as well. So managing your timescale workloads, and if you were and managing that will help you make you more productive as well. Checking in with other people is also really, really good, a good way as well. So where I've worked before, I've had one-to-one meetings with managers where I've talked about my progress, talked about how I felt, talked about any concerns which I've got as well. And from speaking to one manager, I actually managed to sort of help get some of the work reallocated to different sprints as well to help me ease the pressure for work, which I've been doing as well. Also, having work-life boundaries as well, so setting yourself sort of personal boundaries as well. I mean, I'm not talking about quiet quitting where they're saying that you only work the minimum number of hours. I'm actually talking about, I do the work, I work 37 and a half hours, but I will make sure by a certain point of the day, I'll switch off the laptop, stop checking emails after 8 PM at night time. I'll actually sort of go out and do something other than work, and try and especially say at Christmas time, I hardly ever check emails because I just need that or social media, because I just need that mental break and just to clear my head. And you wouldn't run your car just with a certain amount of petrol and just not fill it up after a while, or take care of it. You ever say, or just leave a laptop on 24/7. I mean, probably can be done, but the laptop won't run optimally as well. So, like with those things, you also need to give yourself a break and switch off as well. So, I found ways of improving mental health as well, which I'm going to share as well. and I'll sort of take things a day at a time as well. So evening before each morning, I'll sort of write down a list of what I need to do during the day as well, but also give myself time as well to do everything, making sure as well that I've got some sort of flexibility. Just if, say, a piece of software I'm testing takes a little longer than required as well, and I need a bit of extra time to think, hang on a minute, I need to test a few more things with that. I'll also sort of make sure that I have sort of work boundaries. I mean, like with the emails, I'll cut off. I have a cut-off point of 8 p.m. The same with using a laptop as well. I won't use a laptop after 8 p.m. because my brain just needs a break, just to sort of reset and refocus for the next day. Having sort of good quality food, good food as well is also good for your mood as well. So having sort of things like fruit, cutting down on teas, caffeinated drinks, and alcohol as well, especially last thing at night. I mean, alcohol, it's good to relax for the short term, but in the long term, it can sort of like hype up the stress, ramp it up. So being careful about what you're drinking. I mean, I'm not saying sort of stop drinking altogether, but just sort of being aware that things like that can sort of keep you awake at night. Making sure that you get a decent night's sleep as well, and making sure that you can do some exercise. So for myself, I'll do martial arts as well, and that's a good way of relieving stress. Has a different focus. I could also sort of have a different focus and performing sort of like exercises to do with them, like what I'm doing now. This is actually part of a karate kata as well. But it could also be used as a way of relaxation as well. So things like that, even go for a run or a walk or a bike ride, or just sort of doing, you know, like a sport or any kind of activity. It's good for releasing endorphins, good for de-stressing, and you feel better as well. You feel more productive the next day. I also find writing quite helpful as well, writing my thoughts in a diary about my thoughts, and it gets it on there as well. But also being creative with what I write as well. I mean, I like writing generally. I want to write a book one day, and that's one of the things I find sort of therapeutic, which leads me on to the next point. Be creative. If you like art, go to an arts class, or just use one of those, or just get one of those adult colouring books as well, because they're good at relieving stress and sort of boosting mental health as well. Also practicing mindfulness techniques as well. So find sort of 10 minutes a day, breathing in, focusing on your breathing. But it's a good way of distressing, but also trying things like Tai Chi and just sort of meditation as well, just to sort of get you back into the moment, and having you refocus. If you're struggling though with your mental health, don't be like the dog in the picture where there's a huge sort of fire burning around its house going, I'm fine. Reach out if you need to. I've reached out to people, and it helps as well. Just sort of getting something off your mind is also really, really, really good as well. And speaking to somebody, whether it's sort of like a friend, a colleague, a manager, a family member, or even if you're wanting to call and use a website like AnyFriends, where you can sort of mention how you're feeling, and then some people will sort of read a message and sort of provide advice and help. That's also a good way as well. But please be honest. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try and put on a brave face and say, everything's going really well, I'm going really well, everything's great. And then when you're really struggling inside as well, because bottling it up is one of the worst things you can do. So different organisations which I've been at and which I've sort of read as well are also doing things to help improve mental health. So many organisations have had mental health first aiders and champions as well. Well, they're trained by organisations like Mental Health First Aid UK, where they'll spot the signs of somebody who might be struggling or may be finding things more difficult, to sort of help intervene as well and help them get the support they need as well. But they'll also sort of help speak action plan. So say if an employee is, not performing as how they should be, there could be an underlying problem, not because they're being ignorant or lazy, and have the understanding to sort of help them. I've organised events to do with mental health as well, and to promote mental health awareness. For example, one organisation I worked at, we did an online bake-off as well when it was still lockdown, where we had colleagues from both the UK as well as Europe tuning in, and we had sort of simple recipes, for example, brownies, cookies, flapjacks as well, playing sort of like fun games as well. For example, telling 2 truths, 1 lie as well, and getting people chatting while they're cooking as well. A little bit like Bake Off, but using sort of Zooms or Teams and not everybody in one sort of like big kitchen everywhere. And that was also good to sort of have, keeping people connected and helping to improve mental health. A number of organisations provide mental health training within their organisations for people who've started, as well as existing colleagues. I actually took the initiative to create a mental health awareness course as well at a previous place I worked, where we talked about different types of mental health, a couple of personal stories which I'm going to go on to in a minute, ways in which you can improve mental health, and where to turn to if you need help as well, or if you want to help somebody as well. So it was about a 5 to 10 minute sort of course as well, but all online as well. But a lot of people said that it helped them as well, and they found the course very useful as well. So I had a lot of positive feedback about that. So I'm going to talk about what my own experiences of mental health as well as a story. So back in 2009, I actually lost a brother to suicide, and that literally was hell. I didn't want any family going through what we went through at the time, because it was really, really difficult. It was really difficult to take in, and I just felt at the time there was not much information about mental health which we could do. So following that, I've done a few talks about mental health over the past few years, and I've tried to make more of an awareness as well, and reducing the stigma around it. I even attended a Samaritan sort of session back in about 2012, and learned about how people on the other call centres as well sort of speak to people, react to people, and help people as well who are finding things difficult. So I'm actually looking at working on this. So I'm working on a project as well, which I'm going to roll out at BCS, but also outside of BCS as well, where initially I'm going to start it in sort of South and West Yorkshire. So having a little sort of like fun, meet people sort of like face to face if possible, and sort of teaching skills like SQL, coding, for example, like Python, creating websites like HTML and JavaScript, just so that people can learn a different skill, but also create a safe environment as well, where if they don't feel comfortable talking about things, they don't have to, but a safe space for people to reach out. It's going to be a little like Andy's Man Club and Women's Wellness Clubs, which usually run on the Mondays, where you have sort of like, a safe policy, be nice to each other, no discussions about politics, religion, medication. But it's also planned to sort of teach people different skills to sort of help them cope as well. I'm also going to sort of, bring sort of cakes and stuff like that to those kind of meetings as well, so that people can have a chat, people can have a natter. People, if they're really interested in learning a specific skill, I can point them in the right direction as well, and I can point them to people or websites which can actually help them as well. I'm also planning on doing some more talks as well in the new year. So this year I was planning to do some talks, but I've had anxiety problems this year, and I've had a lot of personal issues to address. But next year, I'm planning on doing a talk about cybersecurity hopefully to the ladies in Cheltenham Hacking Society. I've bribed them with cake. So, and I'm even so, and I might even do a fun prize draw for them all as well. So I'm going to do some research about mental health for cybersecurity. I'm also going to be doing some more further talks about testing as well and mental health, as well as IT and mental health as well, and speak to different organisations in the Yorkshire region to start off with initially, and online as well. I'm also planning on doing different events as well to help promote mental health. For example, exercise. Doing exercise events where people do exercise to help with mental health, but also raise awareness about it. I'm also considering things like martial arts or even archery as well, to sort of help people, feel in a safe setting, raise awareness about mental health as well. So I'm happy to discuss more with people after my talk as well, and at any point during the day as well. I've got a number of resources as well, so which I'm happy to share also afterwards as well. So the Samaritans is a fantastic organisation, and at any point in your life you can contact them, even if you're struggling a little bit, or even if you're not as desperate as well. The Samaritans are still there. Campaign Against Living Miserably as well is a good resource as well for finding information about different mental health, headed by the rapper Professor Green as well. You've also got the Mind as well, which provides some really good information, plus a mental health day they have on the 4th of February with Rethink Mental Illness. And you've also got other organisations like Elephants as well, which are also useful. I've got a list of articles of interest, which I'm happy to share after this talk as well. So a really good one by a cybersecurity professional named Sophia McCall, who was part of the Security Queens as well website as well. So she's a cybersecurity professional, and she's written a really good one about her own experiences about imposter syndrome and mental health. She also recently wrote another article a few weeks ago about mental health, some really good tips about managing mental health in cybersecurity, which is also interesting. Jonathan Wright, who's here as well, he also did a really good talk about an article about QA's weight on burnout of software testing professionals for the QA lead as well, which is also really good as well. So, finally, to conclude, mental health is important, and please reach out if you need to. And it's good that it's getting more of the awareness of the stigma was reducing, although we do need to do more about it. The best organisations are ones which have, focus on well-being as well and mental health awareness as well. And I think those organisations, they'll see sort of like fewer employees sort of turnover as well, because employees will feel that they're being cared about. The people are understanding that they'll get they'll get the support they need as well. Whereas an organisation which is toxic and won't really want to help people as well are the ones which are going to suffer in the long term. But it's vital that organisations promote an environment of wellness as well, and well-being as well, focus on well-being as well, so that employees, can actually, feel like they can do the jobs and they're not sort of hindered by anything as well. But also as well, thanks for supporting this event, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or afterwards as well. But and as well, you all matter as well. So please reach out if you need to. Be there for each other as well, and make sure that you focus on yourselves as well, and get a break from the laptop as well.
Thank you for sharing that. When it comes to the training, do you have any recommendations on how to recommend that managers or higher ups? Because I think something that's potentially lacking in some places is the managers don't know how to support the people that they're managing with mental health.
Good question. Just don't think now. What I did when I did the training, I sort of spoke to HR about that, and they thought it was a good idea as well. And I sort of raised it with my manager as well, and he raised it with the CEO of the company as well, who thought it was a good idea as well. I also wrote another article as well on LinkedIn as well, which was about sort of losing my brother as well and how that affected me. But I think as well, I'll say from personal experience, I'd speak to the human resources, but also sort of speak to your manager as well, plus people who are high up as well, because if you get their buy-in as well, it will help them to make sure that their workplace is more sort of like well-being friendly and actively promoting mental health as well. And I think that, and I think as well, that's a good start as well. I mean, what I think I'd like to do as well is we all focus on our work, but also within organisations having sort of like a lunch and learn, where you'll learn about about half an hour, so people aren't taken away from the work for too long, but also it's a good amount of time to actually switch off from what you're doing and have a short break as well. But having some sort of like fun event, for example, learning a bit about mental health, playing a game, doing a fun quiz as well to help people see how can we make this place more accessible. I mean, it's all good having fruit and pool tables and ping pong table tennis sets and dartboards and stuff, or a PlayStation 3 in a corner as well, so somebody can play Tekken. But if you've not got the proper places and straight things in place where people can sort of talk about how they're feeling and open up, and creating an environment where people feel comfortable opening up as well, then it's going to be no good. So making sure that managers are approachable as well if somebody needs to talk or needs some help, but also having some sort of like training, some sort of training as well to make people aware. That'd be a good start. Thank you. Thanks
a lot for that.
Thank you.
I think you alluded to it by saying you should be honest and have boundaries.
Yeah.
But something I find a lot of people find hard to do.
Yeah, understand.
Big deal.
Yes.
Do you ever say you can't do something? When there's a release in 2 days, and you estimated it would be fine, you just say no. I mean, as a norm in your company or yourself.
It's a good question. I mean, initially when I've sort of estimated the days and stuff like that, I've actually sort of been honest. I've actually sort of said to myself, and I'll try and do it in that many days, but ideally I need a bit more as well, and sort of being honest that way. But you've actually raised a good point as well, which I am going to bear in mind as well, going forward. But
Last question, and we.
I was going to say, piggybacking off of what you said, I had a situation like that, where the rest of my test team were like, no, we don't do all that stuff there, that's your work. I'm like, but we've got 1 week to get 3 weeks of testing done. They're like, well, that's your problem. So I went to management and said, it's not going to get done in this time, unless you don't want it fully tested. They're like, oh, it's okay, we'll push the date back then. And because I stood up and said, it's not going to happen, they went, okay.
I've done the same.
And if they still say yes, you get it in writing that you said it wouldn't be ready.
You raise the risk, and if they want to.
If they want to assume it, get that in writing.
Yeah.
So that when it goes wrong, you can say, you assume the risk, don't look at me.
Do you want to do it again next time?
I've actually.
Want to try it next week?
Yeah, I've actually sort of, when it was sort of halfway through testing stuff, when somebody was wanting to know if something needed to be released that evening, that I had to make a choice of go or no go. I chose no go because not everything was tested properly, and I just thought I don't want to put my name out there and say this is tested when there were so many bugs.
Right.
It still went ahead, but at least actually said I'm not confident that this should be released. So I do apologise, but I can't put my name to something which hasn't been properly tested. It's like,
And that's okay to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine to do. Yeah, it's better to be honest. It's better to be honest and open about that as well. And I understand that they're sort of like, because conflicting, constraints of testing something plus getting it out there as well. But in an ideal situation, I'd prefer to test it properly than sort of test some of it, release it out there. A week later, here are a load of bugs which was a result of it going into production, and then you've got to do some more rework.
Yeah.